All right, welcome everyone. I think I'm live. I'm going to wait until a few people come in. In the meantime, if you know anyone who is interested in Heidegger and technology, philosophy of technology, etc., share the link with them now, and I will be introducing my new course on Heidegger tonight, and also we'll be talking a bit about what happens inside the course, etc. But enrollment is not yet open. Enrollment will open in a couple of weeks. For now, what you can get is the syllabus when you follow the link in the description of the video. Please do let people know that there should be a link somewhere in the description if you want to get the syllabus. Now all you have to do is go to that website and type in your email address, and then the magic of the automation will send you the syllabus. But of course, this is exactly the issue, right? That we think that technology is magical. Let me just share this very briefly also on Twitter, that I'm now live. And in the meantime, as I said before, let everybody know about the live stream right now who's interested in Heidegger, in technology, philosophy of technology, etc., etc. And if you have questions on the course specifically, please let me know, and I hope I can answer the question. So if it's a specific question on Heidegger, I will try and respond. And also I will try and respond if you have any question on what the course is like. So let me begin. Perhaps by way of introduction, I've had a couple of quite a few new subscribers recently, and maybe I'll just introduce myself briefly. So I'm Johannes Niederhauser. I have a PhD in philosophy. I finished my PhD in 2018 after 4 years at the University of Warwick, philosophy department. My thesis was on Heidegger. It's I think, to my knowledge at least, the first study of death and being in the entirety of Heidegger's philosophy. I have published that last year, 2021, as a book, Heidegger on Death and Being, an answer to the question of being. So that's that was the topic of my thesis. That's an extended version of it. After that, I taught for a short while at the University of London and am now a free scholar. So that means I make my living by offering my own courses, and I've been doing so for 2 years now. It all started in early 2020 with a course on leisure as the basis of civilization on Scolaire. My academy is called the Halcyon Academy and Guild, and what I've been building now for the past 2 years is a space for learners, for people who want to join in and learn for the sake of grasping what is today. There are no accreditations for any of the courses. There will never be. I don't care about these pieces of paper. You can get them somewhere else. And what every course is like, if you sign up for the middle tier, then there's a bunch of lectures that are original, that I write for these courses in a very traditional manner. And then also you get live seminars, which I lead in a group so we meet usually over Zoom. And for this course, the seminars begin on February 13th. And whoever's joining in now, please do share the link with anyone who's interested in Heidegger and the philosophy of technology, etc. And if you have a question on this course, on Heidegger, on technology, etc., just put it in the chat and I'll respond at some point later on. So let me just maybe briefly say what the course is then fully, and the title of the course is. And if you follow the link in the description of the video, you'll see also what the full, you find all the information there also. Only a God can save us now. Heidegger on technocracy, cybernetics, and being human. Only a God can save us now. Some of you will know, as Heidegger said during, or in his last so-called last interview with Der Spiegel, which was published after his death. And I think he gave it in the 60s. I'm not entirely certain about this. And he says this specifically when he addresses cybernetics. And for Heidegger, cybernetics is the almost necessary consequence of philosophy qua metaphysics, which means as the forgetting of being. And so the cybernetic planetary system is an instantiation or a reification or setting itself into power through off the forgetting of being. That means the initial schism, thanks to which there can be a genuine presence or abiding of that which is in its own way. And instead, what the cybernetic system does is to produce or to position, stellen, in a demanding and challenging way, everything that is, no longer insofar as it is, but insofar as it is supposed to be, to stand ready as Bestand, as a standing reserve or resource. And so let me give a brief overview then over the lectures. There's a short introductory video, and then there are there are 5 lectures, and they will focus on the following. The first lecture, and they're all accompanied by reading some of the most important texts by Heidegger on technology, on Gestell and framing, etc. But also, and this is very crucial, you will have no understanding, or anyone will have a limited understanding of what Heidegger means with technology if you don't know what the Ereignis is and the Seinsgeschichte, the so-called history of being, which is a terrible translation, but maybe the tidal waves of being, as you can hear a bit. So we have to be careful with the translation. And I will be very careful with the translation, because I do think that the English translations are themselves completely oblivious to what they're supposed to do. They're oblivious to the language that's at stake, and they simply transport the metaphysical prejudices that they have from the German into the English, and then we have something that we can represent immediately, that we can operate with. But that's exactly the issue of that's exactly the technological problem, right? That Heidegger sees. So these translations have been at best terrible, at worst absolutely nefarious for the past several decades. And it begins with Being in Time, which is horribly translated also. So we will be very careful. Like, one example to give this straight away is that, and this will also be the first essay that we read together from Heidegger, the question concerning technology, die Frage nach der Technik. Now, already in that title, so it's actually the question after technics. Heidegger does not really address technology in terms of tools or so. There's something more profound, that's Technik. Technics is a different phenomenon. And what then he asks for in German is das Wesen der Technik. Yeah? That's usually translated as the essence of technology. That gives us immediately something, to represent. Oh, yes, what binds all of these technological tools together? What is what they all have in common? What is their whatness, their essence? No. No, Heidegger specifically says in this essay, and this is, by the way, also where the English translation of this text completely breaks down because it makes no longer any sense. Heidegger speaks in the German of Staatswesen and Hauswesen. That's not the essence of the state. No, that's the weaving and striving and the realm of the state and the realm of the household in its coming to be. As he, he explicitly says it. He couldn't make it more easy to his readers in German and to the translators who didn't care for 1 second to maybe ask themselves, could it be essence? No, and then this embarrassing pseudo translation for Wesen as essencing. That's bonkers. It's not English, first of all. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. And it makes no sense whatsoever in any context. But again, it gives us something to represent. But here, what techniques does, but then we lose exactly what Heidegger is after, which is not the essence of technological tools and what binds them all together, but the dimension, the realm which technics spans open as a mode of being in which, and thanks to which, and we are and have to be and respond to beings and how they appear to us, and in which relationship we are with them. That's what Heidegger is after. And this is what we will be discussing from the light and the standpoint of the Ereignis in the first lecture. So in the first lecture, we'll read the question concerning technology and also the first seminar then. Lecture 2 has 2 titles, The Loss of Nearness and The Danger and the Thing. So we will be going over here some of the texts on the fourfold and building, dwelling, thinking. These are texts that we'll come back to again and again throughout the course. And so this is where we already move then not beyond Gestell or enframing or technology, but we actually move into and the insight of Heidegger that Gestell itself is limited and is only seemingly exclusive, and that there is another possibility of world that's not lurking behind it or is not posited as a utopia beyond it or anything like this, and doesn't run parallel to it either, but is intertwined with it. And that is the region of, the gathering of the 4 regions, the earth, mortals, divinities, and the sky. And it's very crucial that Heidegger keeps coming back to death and being open to our death, being able to die. And ask yourself this: why is it that transhumanism and its functionaries rail against death and see death as a technological problem waiting to be solved, as some have explicitly said? What kind of a sterile and horrendous non-world this is that we've been living through now for the past 2 years also, where we have a full-on technocratic attempt at solving death. So we cannot just stay with Heidegger's. So it's the Gestell itself, this concentration of positing and positioning and challenging, but also, and this is important, it's often, so it's representation and producing, etc. But it's also, in German, one of the modes is also nachstellen, of Gestell, I mean. Nachstellen means to chase after in a revengeful manner, but also to imitate and to simulate. And that's the danger of Gestell, explicitly, as Heidegger says in the talk in Bremen in 1949. That's the danger of Gestell, is that it is simulation. So when you read people like Jean Baudrillard, was many insights from his postmodern position into simulations and simulacra, etc. But he cannot give any, well, just like Foucault with his genealogy cannot show us any validity. There's no validity to any genealogical claim. What Heidegger gives us, if you want to have I hesitate to say it because it gets thrown around so much, but it's the word ontological, I mean. But it is, in a way, an ontological insight into the the tidal unfolding, such that we now live in a non-world that is increasingly simulated. And look at where we are. We look at numbers every day. Oh, the numbers are going up, the numbers are going down. We look at the graphs, and then we try to live our lives according to what the data are telling us. It's almost superstitiously paranoid, this talk about the data. What are the data saying? What do they allow me? What can I do today according to the data? Whereas we know that in Star Trek, data, it's all he wants is to be human. While we forget what it means to be human entirely. So here, so we already have to introduce, or else we're just stuck within Gestell itself. By the way, we're only looking at Gestell, right? This is not. Which is the fact that we can see it means that it already also something shifting. And the main question will be throughout the course is, how can we remain free? How can we remain free human beings? And for anyone who's joining just now, if you have a question on technology and Heidegger, etc., please just let me know, and I'll try and answer in the chat, so you get an idea also what the seminars are like, and you can get the syllabus, which is the course summary, as a PDF file by following that link that I just shared. Just type in your email and it gets sent to you, of course, automatically. So we're making all use of technology here. We're not denying. We have to go into the Gestell, the cave of the Gestell, in order to become free, because that's the question. The question is on how to overthrow Gestell and its operations, or the will to power that lurks within them. But no, the question is, how can we achieve a free relationship with techniques and with technological tools? So, Isaiah, please, that's a good question. But perhaps you could say a bit more. It's a very good question. It's something that we'll have to get into also in the course. And then lecture number 3, this is after the lecture on the thing and building, dwelling, thinking, etc., will be on cybernetics specifically, where I go into Plato, Plato's Republic, and I also go into Heidegger's writings on. So he has a seminar. He gives a seminar with Eugen Fink. I guess you would say Eugene Fink, in, I don't know, maybe the 50s or so, 1950s, where they discuss Heraclitus, and they discuss also the Kybernetein, the steering of the flesh in Heraclitus, and the steering in cybernetics, in genetics, in information technology, etc. So this will be the first part of lecture number 3, and the second part is I bring this together with an earlier essay by Heidegger, which is, so just to explain this, I don't just say sit down and talk as I'm talking right now. My lectures, they're written out. You get the full lecture notes. You get actually a little book. They're about 5,000-6,000 words per lecture. And then I sit down and I read them and I record them. And in this lecture, what I've attempted to do was to bring together Heidegger's later musings about cybernetics with his earlier essay from the 1930s on the age of the world picture, or the world image, because the way in which the cybernetic system functions is through the image, and a very specific image, of course. It's through models and graphs, and again, simulations, data. And I bring also in, of course, what Heidegger didn't see yet or didn't know yet, which is the digitization. So that is in lecture number 3 on cybernetics and the age of the world picture. So 2 more really important essays I will read here by Heidegger and then discuss also. Lecture 4, Technocracy and the Reign of Enframing. And this is where I'm using a text by Heidegger, which is Overcoming Metaphysics, Überwindung der Metaphysik, published in Gesamtausgabe Volume 7. I don't know, to my knowledge, whether this text is actually available in English or not. I didn't find it, so I used my own translation. Therefore, so in this one is where I go into technocracy in terms of epistemocracy, technocracy, the rule of experts, so called, and in how far what the human being is supposed to become or is becoming in this technocratic rule, and how in framing or say Gestell technology still, however, leave open, because I do think there are pathways from within, without, and back into, but such that we're not subdued by technology. And the final lecture, lecture number 5, is on poetic existence and communities of mortals. And that's where we will move back again into the fourfold, the question of how, what Heidegger sees, why he sees as a necessity of that move back into another, not back into, but how he sees this other possibility arising again. We can almost say an archaic way of being within Gestell, within and without Gestell at the same time. So that's the final lecture. And in the course itself, which will start, as I said, on the 13th of February, we'll have actually 6 seminars. So the way this works is you sign up for the seminar tier, then we meet every week Sunday for 2 hours, usually a bit more than 2 hours, usually sometimes 2.5 to 3 hours or so, 6 to 8 p.m. GMT, UK time. And we meet in a group. I lead the seminars. There's enough time because we have so-called breakout sessions where you can talk to everybody else and discuss the readings and the lectures. That's how you prepare for it. And that's where you meet your peers. And what I've seen for the past 2 years is that actually, some of the people move, they come and they stay on. And now actually some of them teach. Daniel Zaruba, for example, who I met only through my courses, is now teaching a course, did teach a course on Nishitani last year. There's going to be a couple more this year. There's Lou, who will teach a course sometime much later this year, but it will be on cybernetics and logic and mathematics, the philosophy of logic, etc. specifically. So that can come also if you show up and do the work and stand out. But most importantly for many, I think, is to meet others. And the beautiful thing is it's intergenerational. So we have youngsters in there who are in their early 20s, going all the way up to, well, I think the oldest one was 75. It's a lot of people from tech, which is striking. Many Americans, which is also very fascinating for me to see that it's so much interest in America and all these courses. So people in tech, people in law, psychiatrists, former or professor emeritus of mathematics from Berkeley. I'm not going to name any names, but it's a good eclectic group always, and it shows you that you're not the only one out there who first of all wants to read philosophy, and also who wants to understand what the hell is going on. So Isaiah Holland is asking, how do we, that was the first question. So I'll try and answer this one, but not for, so, because some of these questions are really good as far as I could see. And I don't want to spill all the secrets here. So you should sign up. How do we develop an understanding of the translation of philosophy into cybernetics? So I will say this very schematically. If you're interested in this is another text I will be reading. Is Heidegger's talk, The End of Philosophy and the Task of Thinking, where he says, and you have to be careful here when Heidegger speaks of philosophy. When Heidegger says philosophy is very specifically meant metaphysics, and that again means the forgetfulness or the forgetting of being. And forgetting of being means a forgetting of the, let's just put it like this for now, of the schism or the cut or the sorry, the difference, let's put it like this for now, between being and beings, such that there is a say a conflation of what the being of beings is, so that we attempt to get to what things are by a reification. For example, the human being is now no longer present in his or her ownness, but is attacked, positioned, produced, challenged, imitated according to the beingness of his being, which is assumed to be genetics, right? Genetic data. That's who we are supposedly in our so-called essence. and and that, so if and this so this forgetting of this initial schism, as it were, that feeds into cybernetics as a control system of steering. And of course, and we have to go much further, and I will do it and do this in the lecture with Plato and with Heraclitus, so that we understand what Heidegger means by steering more specifically, and by cybernetic, and who or what does that steering. And that will also give us hints at who or what might be that God that is supposed to come to rescue. It's very important that Heidegger is not a deist and not a theist either. This is not theological in any Judeo-Christian sense. But I won't say more here for now. It's a very good question. Is that this is exactly the kind of question that we'll be discussing. Here is SPQR. Do you think? No, that's no. Technology requires indexability. Someone was saying technology leaves out things that are on. Oh, Steve, hello, Steve. Steve's one of the first ones. He came in, what was it, April 2020, to my first course, which was on leisure scolaire otium, and has been with us ever since. So yes, I agree with Steve here. It's exactly right. So what's striking is that, and Heidegger says somewhere in the Black Notebooks, that we need sorry, that the human being is the victim of the filing cabinet of the archive, and what is not indexable, that's already lost to this weird operation of Gestell. At the same time, though, what the archive maybe once had archived, but then loses, is also no longer factors into it. And at the same time, and this also comes back to this question of what does Heidegger mean by the forgetting of being? He also means, to say a bit more about this, the forgetting of inherent concealment and withdrawal in any appearance, clearing, opening, and disclosure. So, in the most radical way in which he will say this is Lichtung für das sich verbergen. He's already on the path to this in Being and Time, in the sections or the chapters on truth. I think it's paragraph of chapter 44 in Being and Time, but it's not yet, of course, fully developed. This is where Heidegger, this is where he ignites as a thinker, is when he notices that there is something really striking about lethe in the aletheia. When he retranslates the word aletheia, no longer just as truth and no longer as correspondence truth in his understanding, but as unconcealment, Entbergung, but then through a hyphenization, realizes that in any Bergung, Verbergung, or Entbergung, so in any disclosure, opening up, the Berg, the original lethe, the original forgetting, concealing, disappearing even or so, does not evaporate, but remains, if you like, active. And so what technology forgets, or actually must crowd out, is any concealment. It must make everything available or seemingly controllable. But this seeming of, and this is something we'll get into as well, this seeming control or so, that is actually, for Heidegger, is especially when he, that's eine Scheinsicherheit, we would say in German. Yeah, this is a false security, a false sense of security, but that doesn't quite capture it. It's only a seeming certainty or security, because what it really is what's lurking behind it in the operations of the will to will is an anarchy of catastrophes, such that the will must give itself new tasks all the time, new great, trans-historical, futuristic goals of utmost control, to make sure his own excesses are reined in again. So there's a question here. So I don't know anything about Max Weber, at least not that I could say anything about this now. But well, so I would always refrain from. So the question is: has Gestalt some commonality with Max Weber's iron cage of rationality or bureaucracy? It's very, so Weber's a sociologist, completely different systematic approach to thinking. Well, let's just put it like this. There is obviously something that we could call instrumental rationality in place or at work in Gestell, but it's much more. It's a lot more encompassing than simply Weber's or anyone else's critique of bureaucracy or so. And by the way, what Heidegger does say, and he doesn't mention his name there, but he does say that the world is not being disenchanted. The world is in fact enchanted by technology and in our technological age. This is something. But look, so I'm just going to be intellectually honest and say that I can't, on the top of my head, say anything because I don't know enough about Weber. But this is what the seminars are really good for, because you will come, or people will come with different backgrounds, have read, for example, Weber, or let's say Günther Anders or so, and therefore bring something that I don't know yet. So we all learn. And aus Bremen, jawohl. Oh, so Godot asks, have you ever considered talking to John Reveki? Well, I am very fortunate to call John Reveki my friend, and we've been speaking for more than 2 years. So yes, and actually, there are several videos of me with him, and the next one will be out this Sunday on my channel with John Verveke and Daniel Tarab, another great friend of mine, where we discuss also computation and the quest for systematization, etc. So that's already up on the channel, and you can turn on the notification, the reminder for that video when it goes live on this Sunday, 8 p.m. UK time. So regards to Bremen, Godot, thank you very much for the question. Does Heidegger, so I'm not sure whether I can, does Heidegger or anyone draw any cybernetic connection between Hegel's revealed religion, where the conception of the gods are so because they gain control over those under their conceptual domains? That's excellent. Man, I hope you sign up for this one. Because you have to speak to Lou. So Lou is the guy who will teach the cybernetics course, as I said, towards the end of this year. But he will very likely also be in this course as a participant. And so that's the kind of mad things that we have to get into. I mean, there is something spooky about the encyclopedia in Hegel, just a bit different to what you were saying. But this weird encyclopedic rule book that tries to corroborate and bring all together. I mean, for obvious reasons, as he does say that we are at the end of an age. Hegel is very clear about this, and do need some kind of a new metaphysics in order to get us grounded again. By the way, this is Heidegger's project in the beginning. So something that will be very much in the background here, but is important, of course, is being in time. But being in time, the attempt of being in time was in the question, of course, whether it succeeds or not, but was to write, as he puts it, a fundamental ontology, an ontology on which to ground the sciences. Because the crisis, the crisis of the European sciences, which has not been solved, and which is why you now have a blind, weird faith in science as a religion, was its unfoundedness, and also that already Cartesian subjectivity had run its course by the time of Heidegger writing this. And by the way, from very early on, Heidegger responds to Descartes in his lecture course on time in 1925 in Marburg. He says, sum moribundus, I am insofar as I am towards my death. And that's his snappy response to Descartes, because it's death that takes Dasein out of itself from the beginning. So, okay, thank you, Zaya. The god is Prometheus. Oh God, no. Yeah, no. But nice try. Does man being an existential of Dasein, is it fair to say of its necessity for Dasein? So, yes. That's very important to realize from the very beginning in Heidegger. It's a non-dialectical way of thinking. It's a thinking of equiprimordiality, simultaneity, just as disclosure, and the simultaneity of unconcealment and concealment is that's really, really, really crucial to understand. That so when you look at this, I think it's section 27 in Being in Time. I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's section 27, where Heidegger goes into Das Man. By the way, the they self doesn't really capture it. What goes in English, what goes on in the German vernacular, and it's such a strange way that Germans can speak. Right, we can say, where the English vernacular will often say you if they speak in the general, but if they speak in the general, right? The German vernacular can go into the mode of das Man, and in this mode of das Man, there is so we can say, instead of saying I, right? I was suffering. You can say Man. Man hat gelitten. It's really weird. Da hatte man sich zum ersten Mal getroffen. But that takes someone else into account, but it doesn't say we. And there are these weird passive constructions also in French. It's even spookier in Italian, where it's just a passive construction without any subject that's being acted upon. Si prega di chiudere la porta. This is just awkward. So there is something being done. It's a yeah. Uh, so I think this is Kevin. Empedocles will finally rise from Mount Etna. Yeah, let's pray for that one. But yes, so to come back to your question, which is very good, you cannot get rid of Das Man, and there is no authenticity without inauthenticity. This is also very crucial to understand when it comes to any thinking about the Enlightenment. Robespierre, our favorite Robespierre, what does he say about the revolution? He says about revolution. He says, and he actually, he destroys his own argument with it. He says, when the world now is half revolutionized and the other half will follow, but at the same time he has to admit that while one half of the earth is in the light, the other half will be in darkness. The sun will set. The sun will rise only if it sets on the other half. And this is so. Anyone who screams about enlightenment values, blah blah blah, would have to understand at least at some point, maybe, that there is a dark side to reason, that it cannot be divided from it, that any enlightenment is requires almost the dark, and if there's no moment where you arrive at full authenticity. You could almost say it's in the minute, if you want to speak like an, have to be careful not to speak like an existential coach or anything here, but it's in the minute where you become most aware perhaps of your utter inauthenticity. That's only then can you see your authentic possibilities. And so in the moment when it tears something also away from you, so it comes, this is why death is so crucial in being in time. So by the way, anyone who's new right now, please do go to my website and get the syllabus. We've got 100 people on there already. Hi Rob, good to see you of sorts. And so you get the syllabus sent to you if you just type in your email address, and it will only be used for that. So don't worry, don't do anything else with it. And then I'll email you personally in a couple of weeks when I open early enrollment. And then we start on the 13th of February. So let's get this year rolling good, and let's understand what technology, technocracy, etc. is. So Rob is one of the people who've been to many of the courses. Also, Steve, who's here. So Isaiah asks, where can I find Lou's course? So as I mentioned before, Lou will teach his course on cybernetics and the philosophy of logic, etc. later this year. It's coming, but it will come much later towards the end of this year. This is a good preparation, I think, for that course. And if you join in, you don't just, it's a live cohort, so you get to meet others. We're usually about 20-30 people in the seminars. You talk to everybody else over this course. Then there's a discussion forum where you can continue a discussion afterwards. People have started reading groups like crazy. As I said before, you see someone like Daniel who's then teaching, or Lewis, the same story, who starts starting teaching now. Yeah, Jung. Okay, I actually have a book here by Jung. I would have to. So, I'm always, so someone's asking about Jung's shadow work, etc. It does point to this, but Jung is Jung works with Vorstellungen. Yeah, das sind Vorstellungen. Das sind it's a completely different approach to what is. But I will see this. I will say this. There is something peculiar about Jung and Heidegger and many others at the time of something you could say waking up again, that is not present really, or is crowded out in early modernity and its peak around the time of terminal idealism, etc. Also, so that I will see. I don't know whether they were actually in touch or not. I don't know. It could be. Um, so yeah, this. So there's actually a little lower. Let me see. Sorry, just so I'm not. Very good. So we've got about 10 more people now on the list. And as I said, you don't just come in and take a course on your own. I mean, you can take the course on your own if you don't have the time for the discussion seminars, the live seminars. And there's always a couple of people who just cannot make it because of time zone differences. There's people in Australia, etc. And I understand that's not always possible to join us at 3 a.m. on a Monday morning. But if you do join in for the group, then we are really in an extended dialogue. And at the end of it, and that's perhaps most important, there's the final seminar is the seminar where you present your own work. So it depends, maybe a 5-minute talk, maybe a 10-minute talk at the end of it, which then we can either publish or not. And it's so what, maybe say a bit more. If there are more questions on Heidegger, just let me know. I'll be here another 5 or 10 minutes or so. But in the meantime, let me just say this. So there are people who wanted to study philosophy when they were younger, and they didn't because of all kinds of reasons. You know what happens, and or maybe they did study some philosophy, but then, as the Americans say, life got in the way, and they do come back though, and it doesn't matter. So, and also, if you have never read anything, I've seen people who've not read, who actually 2 years ago, and this, I'm not going to say his name, but he's on my channel now also because he's a brilliant mind. He came in, hadn't read much Heidegger, I think, and has been taking many courses since the Hegel course, the last one too. You can just see something lighting up, right? Do come with an open mind. It's not school. It's very difficult. I'm not sitting here like a sophist telling you, you will master Heidegger in 5 weeks. That's a lie. If it's confusing and you go away dislodged, my work is done. I've succeeded, as it were. If you go away with more questions and maybe a bit of a sense of impending doom or so, then I feel I have accomplished something. So I'm not saying you come in and everything will be clear, because nothing is clear. Right? This is exactly this madness of technology in studying, also in philosophy, where everything is supposed to be clear and readily available and immediately operational, etc., or the way we can judge it and evaluate it, etc., etc. No, you to open yourself up to the world, you have to lose yourself first. Okay, no idea what this question is about. So, if there are any more, sorry, I can't. This is too long. If anyone has a question on Heidegger specifically, and uh, and technology, just let me know. If not, then please do this before I forget. Here is my website, which is, so this is the Halcyon. Thank you, Kevin. He, sorry, Alagon just said he is good at this dislodging. I don't notice it, because this is just what I'm like. And so, go to this website, fill in the form, You get sent the syllabus, which is the course description, as a beautiful PDF file with the details on the titles of the lectures, quotes from Heidegger, what the course is about, the central motive, what we will be reading, so you can familiarize yourself with this. And then, because then I have your email address, I will reach out to you then. This is an automated email that you get, but I will reach out to you then personally in a couple of weeks when I open early enrollment. And I've had really so much interest in this course already, with just putting out a few tweets and maybe a few short videos. I mean, shorts sound very weird, on YouTube. That I'm not even sure whether I will make a big opening ceremony for this one, because it might fill up quickly. So if you do sign up now, then you're on the list, and then I'll send you details about how to enroll, etc. And I'll do this, as I said, directly. There won't be at least in the beginning, there won't be automated emails. And then I hope to meet many of you. I've seen what's, as I said before, you will. So you have to put in the work, right? I'm not holding your hand here. I can walk with you for a little bit, but you have to do the work, and you also have to be open to meet others and be challenged and be really, really, flipped a bit. We're not a cult, not trying to change anyone, but you need to bring that openness and get rid of all prejudices and presuppositions. And at the same time, though, if you are open in this way, then you will meet many others. You will make friends. I can't guarantee this for everyone, but I can say that I've seen it happen. And people who live thousands of miles apart in different countries. I know that Daniel is good friends with Thomas, who is in New York. Daniel is in Vienna. They speak on a regular basis. They philosophize together. Thomas will also be on the channel very soon. And I think it helps people. It gives that what scolaire means, right? It gives us all something to hold on to. And because what we're trying to do really is not just to what is Heidegger arguing here, blah blah blah. No, we're trying to understand what does it mean to be today, and what does it mean to be human. What is the 21st century, which is a very young century, and it's ours to make. Right? We're young enough. We shouldn't continue all these ridiculous feuds from the past 200 years. We also have to make a cut here ourselves and start taking ownership of this age and give our own answers. And Heidegger can give us hints, but Heidegger says himself, and this is very important. This also gives us a hint as what is good teaching, and that. There's a seminar apparently where some student started to sound like Heidegger. And Heidegger said to him, "Hier wird nicht geheidegert." So that's in English, that would be something like, "We don't Heideggerianize here." Yeah, very important. So that, yeah. We're not becoming dogmatic Heideggerians or anything like this. That's not the issue. What the point is. The point is really to come together as on a quest, in a search for trying to understand who we are and what the hell is going on. And I think Heidegger can give us, as I said, some hints, but we have to think for ourselves. That remains true. That much, as Kant says, sapere aude, have courage to think for yourself, right? Not just take enlightenment values at face value or as given. And this increase or so, that's this increase in interest in Heidegger's thinking, which is pointed out here as if it were like quantifiable or so. I don't think there's ever been a decrease or anything like this, but It's apparently now dawning on people more than when Heidegger started writing about technology, that there is something awkward and strange and estranging, um, and and terrifying, but also exhilarating and exciting and radically new in techniques that people weren't open for 60, 70 years ago, but are now beginning to be open to out of necessity, because the distress, Heidegger always says, the true the emergency of our time is that there is no sense of emergency. But now the sense of urgency, it's here. I mean, nihilism is in full effect, right? It's in full force. Nietzsche was screaming about it. No one gave a shit. Um, but yes, now it's well, now we can slowly see something, perhaps. But then we need to develop a grounding for ourselves on which we can read this, because the response, for example, to this pragmatic response that Hubert Dreyfus gives us, oh, let's drink tea like the Japanese. That's not a response. It's not this is not who we are. Um, do you think guilds can function as a counter? Oh, that's going way beyond Heidegger. Counterforce to the monoculture in contemporary universities, or is that consideration relevant for you? So I would recommend, very good question. Thank you very much, Barry. Um, Let me find something. A good friend of mine, I haven't spoken with Adam, unfortunately, for some time. Um, sorry. Um, Adam Robert runs the Side View. Um, and it's a very good publication, which is also um, outside the institutions, and he also has a podcast. And I would recommend you, Barry, that you please watch this video with Adam, where he granted me his time, and I was able to speak about my project, where I go into what I think is a relevant question. But obviously, just I don't want to say too much here, but obviously, the word guild is a conscious choice that's aware of where universities come from, and that I think they are coming to an end. And so there's a revival here of the original universitas, which started out as guilds of scholars. Um, and it can, of course, lead to a certain reawakening of a certain spirit within philosophy departments and others. But I don't think that it currently will be able to accept this, because of the mentality that is prevalent and that is being pushed into you, even from the most good-hearted old school professors, because they do want to see, for their own vanity, of course, they want to see their boys and girls, they want to see them succeed. So they tell them from the beginning how to succeed, which is by becoming an automaton. Um, and by giving up, right? And then I mean, you've given up on philosophy when you think of yourself as an early career philosopher. You're done. Just leave. This nothing touches you, and it's in it. You can see this, right, in the whole everything. There's nothing there. There's no love for it. It doesn't change who you are. It's simply a career. And so, but there is, of course, I mean, but my project is not to wake up anyone who's inside academia. That's not my job. That's not my task. I don't see myself. It might lead to that, but that would be an unintended consequence. But it has to do very much with technocracy, right? I mean, the rule of technocracy is strongest in this imitated world of what once was academia. um, where you are really at the mercy of algorithms, etc. So, all right, I have got to go very soon. I'd like to thank you very much. They were really excellent questions, and I hope that you all sign up, and the Frito Belize says more like faith in humanity versus secular transhumanism. Yes, that's also something we'll be discussing. Is of course transhumanism, which is a birth from. Yeah, thank you, Barry. You're welcome. Uh, yeah, so I mean, transhumanism is born from humanism, right? From a fetishization of the human, and but at the same time, of course, it's not just born from this. There are other elements that factor into this as well, like Gnosticism, etc. But Gnosticism is ultimately pessimistic, and that modern transhumanism isn't. So it's not just purely, hey, Bruce, one of my favorites. Um, been coming now almost for a year, I think, also to my courses, right? I think since the Heidegger one. Um, so Bruce has already signed up for that one too. Um, and so Bruce is a bit, can I say this, Bruce? I hope I can. Is a bit older than me, perhaps. Very interesting life story. Used to be a nurse and has been reading on his own, I think, philosophy for many, many years. And so that's the kind of people you meet. People who have, some will have studied philosophy, others have not officially studied philosophy, but you will not believe the intensity of these seminars. It Every time Philip, my friend Philip Nicholas, who teaches Hegel for Halcyon, every time he finished one of his seminars, I got these extremely excited texts about how intensely spirit was present again. There is a question again. I don't know whether this question about the technique in relation to metaphysics, which in this day and age is becoming prevalent in the world as it begins to creep into everyday crevasse of collective Dasein, makes one think. It does. Very good. So, what Heidegger says about metaphysics is, well, he sees in technology an instantiation of metaphysics. So metaphysics is coming into its completion, in its full force, and as it comes into its full force and completion, it no longer speaks to us, right? It's that in a weird way, the dimension of metaphysics collapses, but then reinforces itself in technology, in the instantiations, um, in technical instantiations, in things that can be made available in that manner and controllable through a, say, a certain Platonism or so. But it doesn't speak to us anymore. And when Heidegger speaks of the need for another Anfang, so not beginning, but another inception or onset, that's very important. So in German, Anfang, which can mean beginning, yes, but Anfang, uh, you can hear the word fangen, which means to catch. So we're not tearing down the past or the tradition, but we catch that which is worthy and necessary to be continued um, and uh, and and so metaphysics. We have to be careful. I don't think Heidegger thinks that metaphysics is wrong or there's something something that we need to get rid of or so. But and this is exactly where we are, though, right? So where is academic philosophy? Maybe this is also something. Oh, thank you, Grammatar. Thank you also for your comments and everything. Maybe this is also relevant for Barry, and I'll finish on this one. Think about what's going on in academic philosophy, right? Either you have let's read every last bit about that Schelling's ever written, and then let's comment on everything and blah blah blah, uh, or let's become analytical historians of philosophy, which is oxymoronic beyond belief, beggars belief, as you can say. Or we have epigonal renaissances, right? Like new realism. New realism. Whenever you hear new realism, and I actually go into this in the cybernetics lecture, because that's exactly what cybernetics is, or technocracy. These are programs that are scripted in a certain way to get the funding, right? To have this edge of something new, which keeps the whole machinery going. And it announces itself as new. I mean, it's already in the title that it's dead in the womb. And of course, and they have a half-life of 10, 20 years, these movements, and they collapse. And they're called out. There's no inner need for them. There's a completely superficial external need, which is getting funding and getting recognition within academic in-groups. This is what this is. And so philosophy itself is therefore at an end. And this has to do with the place of the university and with this collapse of the metaphysical. Nothing speaks to us. And the art now is to be able to make the texts speak again to us, not as a new program which allows one to quarrel about isms, blah, blah, blah. No, but to really, really, whether it says something about who we are or not. And this is not possible within academia. I guarantee you that's impossible. You're laughed at when you take someone like Heidegger seriously, for example, at conferences of so-called Heideggerians. So thank you, Friedel. Again, please do get the syllabus now. I'm sharing the link one more time, so you do have it. Please go to my website, type in your email address, and I'll reach out to you in a couple of weeks. So you get the syllabus, the course summary overview as a PDF. And then I'll reach out to you personally in a couple of weeks, or maybe already next week, depending on how many. I mean, I have to get started on enrollment, because we do have a lot of interest. So I do want to get reach out to everyone who's now on the list to get you in early and make sure you have a spot, and also that you can actually then, when you actually have enrolled early enough, you can start reading, because then I'll send you what you can read for now, etc. So you can start reading the question concerning technology, building, dwelling, thinking, the thing, etc., etc. And if you know anyone who's interested in this, just maybe share to maybe share this with friends who are interested in this technology as well, and or in Heidegger, and they are more than welcome to join in as well. And also, as mentioned before, someone was asking about John Vervaeke, Daniel Zaruba, and John Vervaeke, and myself recorded something yesterday on the return of the forms, which has to do also with the question of computation and where we are in the 21st century, and what is it that speaks to us, and how we can make sense of the world, how we can find sense in the world, how sense can give and grant itself. That will come out this Sunday on my channel. And now I shall leave you. I shall retire, and I hope to see you all inside the course. Thank you very much indeed. Good night. Now, how do I leave this? Okay, I found it now. See you, and do get the syllabus. Thank you. Good night.